In this rendition of Ringelgollum rants about songs he likes, I want to discuss some of my favorite musical aspects of Nmixx song Crescendo. Okay, let's be real, I will just yap about pretty much the entire song, with a focus on form, rhythm and instrumentation. There's a lot to enjoy about Crescendo, and I'm excited, so let's just jump right in. The song starts out in D flat major at 108 BPM. The chords are voiced such that we get a descending motion. And on the fourth measure, we get a 5/4 chord with a C flat, the lowered 7th scale degree. But while the harmony is pretty simple, the intro still immediately sets up a weird atmosphere. Our initial melody is sung by a pitch-shifted and effected voice, sliding into some notes and at times jumping large intervals. The main instruments sound like somewhere between bell and lamellophone. It might be some kind of music box, filtered and with noise added. On every quarter beat, there is a hit that sounds very filtered and washed out. Maybe the attack from a pitched instrument, but probably some kind of messed up percussion. As everything else, it is drenched in reverb. Weirder still, the pitch in the intro is shifting around, as can be seen by taking a spectrum. So in many ways, the intro is of a low sound quality, very much deliberately. It sounds like a recording being played on a somewhat broken vinyl player in a large empty room. And the music box-like sound and the affected voice may both be associated with a young child. In combination, all this might even sound a bit creepy to some. I am weirdly reminded of the infamous Bread Lo-Fi. But more than creepy, the overall mood feels introverted, withheld, personal to me. With the fifth measure, sudden messed up sounds enter, and they seem very close to our ear, jumping out of the texture, disturbing the more pensive mood. This seems to mess with the song so much that the intro gets cut short. Instead of the usual 8 measures total, we get only 2 more measures, so 6 in total, before being dumped into the first verse. Nmixx haven't sung for the entire intro, and so it is with the verse that we hear their voices for the first time. The vocals stay pretty simple overall, but get a weird moment when we seem to be in Mixolydian at first, hitting flat 7, C flat, and then get a C natural, the major 7th, not even 2 seconds later, and also rhythmically emphasized, which sounds kind of wrong. But the shift between C and C flat is something we also heard in the intro, though there it was functional harmonically. Here it is just a fun color change. The bass plays 16th notes on tonic, the main beats accented maybe by another higher instrument. The percussion is initially very simple as well, a snare on 2 and 4, hi-hats on every 16th. This gives a stable platform, both to contrast with the intro and to build on. The verse is kept interesting by little interjections of the more creepy soundscape from the intro. We get a return of both the messed up screechy sounds and the weird affected voice. Further ear candy gets added by low and high piano D flats, panning in our ear. We also get little rhythmic hiccups through dropping out the bass, adding drum fills and triplet hits. So the verse is more energetic and brighter than the intro. A lot of fun, but still with callbacks tying it in. Towards the end, we raise energy by added crowd vocals, added 16th snare notes, and, of course, the classic riser. The pre-chorus pulls back the energy, however, returning us to the intro material. This time we have added a messed up guitar sound. Thanks to the vocals, the pre is a bit more grounded than the intro, but it still pulls us back into that uncertain feel. Apart from a bit of white noise added in towards the end, the pre-chorus does not really build energy. Often a pre-chorus will introduce quickening rhythms, risers, or similar, to get us hyped up for a chorus. But this one seems to slow us down, ending after only 6 measures like the intro. But here, instead of entering a new section immediately, we get a 2/4 bar inserted, so 2 more beats that are silent apart from a very low bass note sliding down. And after all that pulling back of energy, the chorus hits.
Oh my God, out of control.
And the hits are massive. The bass is overwhelmingly loud, the vocals crowd chant a simple line, and the buzzy higher instrumental adds color with sparkling 7th chords, outlining a similar progression to earlier. I think I can hear some super fast arpeggios running up and down, and there might be orchestral instruments in there, like strings and brass, but the mix is super muddy, so nothing is really recognizable. It's just one big texture to me. What adds to the grand feel is the change to halftime. We feel the song at half the tempo, which just seems to make everything more expansive and more thing big.
Oh my God, out of control.
And then, after 3 massive hits, we get almost complete silence. Only a bit of vocal carries over through reverb. And a silence like that feels huge. It is not a backhanded compliment when I say that the rests are among the best parts of this song. After the next 3 hits, on our 4-chord G flat, we get what is probably my favorite instrumental moment of this song. I challenge you to find and play that note on a piano. Well, unless you have access to an Imperial Bösendorfer or similar, you are out of luck, because I'm pretty sure that we hit a sub-contra G flat 0, which is lower than the normal 88-key piano goes. The fundamental frequency of this note is only around 23 Hz, barely in the range the average human can perceive. At that frequency, it is less about hearing the pitch and more about manually counting along to the pressure waves. This is only partially a joke. You can actually kind of count along. For example, I made this rhythm track at 173 BPM. We can subdivide into 8th notes and still easily hear the pulse. Next, we will further subdivide into 16ths and at times 30 seconds. The 30-second notes are now happening at 23 Hz, and we can still hear each attack. Similarly, with the low G flat in Crescendo, you can kind of hear the pulses at 23 Hz in the rumble. In the song, at least the music video version uploaded to YouTube, if we look at a spectrum, that fundamental frequency is not even in there at all. But from the overtone structure, we can still perceive the super low rumble. This is called missing fundamental effect. To understand it, let's take a quick look at the overtone series. Think of a simple vibrating string, like from a piano or guitar. Since the string is fixed on both ends, it can only vibrate in its entire length, or half that, or a third, or more generally, divided by integer multiples. Frequency is inversely related to the string length, so half the string length gives double the frequency. This means that the sounding frequencies will be integer multiples of the fundamental. For example, a string with a fundamental frequency of 100 Hz will also ring at 200 Hz, 300 Hz, 400 Hz, and so on. These are called overtones. Typically, higher overtones will become quieter. In the following example, I chose the overtone amplitudes and phases such that we slowly build into a sawtooth wave. The cool thing is that even when we remove the fundamental frequency, we will often still perceive the pitch as the greatest common divisor of the overtones. If we take our sawtooth example, we have a fundamental sine wave of 100 Hz, with its natural overtones up to a kHz added. Now, one by one, the lowest frequency sine wave will get removed. Listen to what you hear as the lowest frequency pitch. Chances are you still perceived the initial low frequency. As can be seen from the waveform, the periodicity remains the same, which is part of why we still hear the fundamental frequency. The same effect applies to the low piano note in Crescendo. Even without the 23 Hz in our ears, we get a fitting overtone structure and thus a periodicity of just about 43 milliseconds, which lets us perceive the low fundamental. Climbing out of the little physics basement we just went down, I also love the attack on this note. It just hits super hard, like a pianist really smashing that key or plucking the string by hand. I actually do not know if the producer pitched an already low piano note further down, or used a recording of a real piano with extended range. Now I know that Nmixx is under JYP, but just imagine an SM Classics arrangement with an Imperial Bösendorfer and the pianist punishing that lower register. A dream. After having raved about a single piano note, let's skip straight to another highlight with the post-chorus, or rather a single transition meter. We get a nifty vocal stack, starting on our tonic, adding a third, shifting to a flat 2 chord while adding its fifth, then adding a D flat to build a flat 2 major 7th chord. This is such a pretty sound that it hides the dark machinations going on below. Once we enter the second verse, we are at a new tempo, up to 117 BPM from 108 BPM. Now one might expect the new tempo to begin either with or after the post-chorus. To figure out which, let's listen to the post-chorus with a metronome, first at the old tempo of 108 BPM. As you can hear, this doesn't really line up well. While beat 3 seems to fit, the second voice comes in a bit early and beat 4 and 1 on the next measure are too early. So is the post-chorus already at the new verse 2 tempo of 117 BPM? Let's check with a metronome. Well, no. Now the second vocal lines up, but all the other ones are wrong. But what happens if we align the metronome with the second verse and shift it a measure earlier? Okay, now we are getting somewhere. Beat 3 and 4 of the measure are now aligning with the vocals. But what about beat 1 and 2? The tempo changes with beat 3 of the post-chorus. The first 2 quarter notes are still at the lower 108 BPM. The second 2 quarter notes are at the new, faster 117 BPM of the second verse. If we set our metronome like that, the overall timing finally lines up. But one weird thing remains. The vocal joining in near beat 2 is still a little bit early. Its timing would fit the newer verse 2 tempo. On the other hand, the notes before shifting to the flat 2 chord are then held a little bit longer. So why is that? Well, we are talking centiseconds here, but I'm pretty sure that this is meant as a way to prepare the new tempo. We get our faster pulse for a moment, drop back to the old tempo, then fully into the new one. Mathematically, since 117 to 108 is a ratio of exactly 13 to 12, it means that our initial note is shortened by a 13th of a beat, aka a 13th tuplet of a quarter note, and the second note is lengthened by that duration. In the song, that lengthening is somewhat hidden by the fact that we start to slide into our new pitches earlier, but the initial 13th offset fits very accurately. So yeah, I'm like 95.45% sure this 13th shift was intentional, and I find it very funny. It is something most of us mere mortals will only notice with a metronome. Oh, and we get back to the old tempo in a similar way. The final verse 2 measure has 2 beats at the fast tempo, then 2 beats at the lower, held down by the snare drum. A few more words on the second verse, though. While it might feel like a big departure at first glance, with its new tempo, different rhythmic feel from the first verse, the new instrumental with low plucked strings, and new chords, a lot of it was actually foreshadowed at some point. The rhythmic feel is taken from the chorus, with percussive hits initially at halftime. And the post-chorus introduces the new tempo and also the 1 flat 7th chord progression that pervades the second verse. The harmony in the second verse actually gets a bit gnarly. For example, the vocals hold the E flat in the melody, while the pizzicato chords shift to an E double flat below. The top line kind of ignores the instrumental in this section, and in the second half of the verse, we get an ascending motion in a synth with some spice. Here we get all the wrong notes, stuff like A flat against B flat with an E flat all over D flat. Out of context, this sounds just bad. But at the end of the verse, the music seems to be looking for a change, increasing intensity rhythmically, melodically, in texture, and also getting louder, actually crescendoing, so the harmonic clashes are just a part of a greater struggle. We then skip the pre-chorus and go straight into the chorus, which makes sense considering how much energy we just amped up. Going back to a withheld pre-chorus and then back again to a big chorus would probably hurt the overall trajectory of the song. We know how the chorus sounds after all, so its entrance wouldn't be exactly a surprise the second time. And thus it is sensible to just drop straight in. Also, the chorus feels even slower compared to the first one, because not only are we back to half time, we also just slow down the actual tempo from 117 back to 108 BPM. After the second chorus, we get to the bridge. At first, this plays out like expected. 8 bars, so very much a middle 8. We finally move a bit harmonically, more towards B flat, the relative minor. I also really like the more syncopated feel in drums and percussion. This section is the grooviest in the entire song. And above that floats a new melodic idea, a slow overall ascending motion, alternating between a step down and a larger leap up, harmonized. And for the second half, we get a new vocal line with a faster rhythm while the ascending motion repeats. We also added the pizzicato from verse 2. Together with the bass, this makes this probably the most polyphonic section yet. But after these 8 bars, we don't head back to the chorus yet. We get another section that functions as a bridge part 2. We mostly copy the pre-chorus melody, use similar chords, and also get the affected voice from pre and intro. But now all that is beefed up, floating over strong hits on every other beat, similar to the chorus ones. Here they are played by electric guitar, maybe with some organ mixed in. We heard a very sad, weak electric guitar in the first pre-chorus. Now it has found strength, energy, and grown into a force to be reckoned with. Also, the hits are syncopated on 2 and 4, directly developed from the backbeat in the first part of the bridge. And as with the pre-chorus, we get only 6 measures, plus a 2/4 bar. As seen, most of the material here stems from the pre-chorus, which evolved from the intro. But especially the affected voice now has a totally different feel to me. Not because it itself changed, but because the context around it did. While it felt personal and introverted in the intro, it now sounds almost like a heroic theme with its leaps, grown and confident. The way it enters a beat before the big hits is cathartic to me. In that imaginary orchestral version of mine, that's a trumpet part. And then the final chorus arrives, somehow even bigger than before. Our previous spaces are taken up by drum fills. The chords are bolstered in the low end by our bridge guitar growling along. And our melodic idea from bridge part 1, the stepwise ascent, reappears too. And during all that, we finally get a true ascending line in the guitar. Very simple, but super satisfying, reaching a jubilant tonic note over the last chorus chord. At least energy-wise, we have very much crescendoed. And what about our weird affected voice from the intro? While the voice itself does not appear, it is still very much with us. Okay, let's combine these 2/8 notes to a quarter. And then leave out the last 2 notes. And finally, let's shift these notes down the octave. The chorus melody is basically just the weird voice melody. The very first motive we hear is with us even during the choruses. And after all that, what remains? 2 more measures, reserved just for our initial voice, now unimpeded. It has been through a lot, but can now happily stand on its own feet.
Anyway.
Wow, that was such a cheesy video essay line, I apologize. But I'm sure one can easily interpret Crescendo as a story about personal growth and identity or something like that. More generally, I do think that Crescendo has a very strong form and overall trajectory, with lots of highlights. I mean, just take a quick look at the overall rhythmic outline. For pop music, this is kinda wild. I think it is impressive how much Crescendo gets done in under 2 minutes 40. It may have a short runtime, and people have complained about that, but I think there is so much to experience in Crescendo. It takes us on a grander journey than most 3 or 4 minute songs. And the great thing about music is that we can follow on that journey simply by listening. Thank you for watching. If you have any corrections, further ideas, or questions, feel free to leave a comment below. Oh, and can someone please get me out of this basement I've been locked into before?